Hi there everyone. Welcome to AdvancePro University. Today we're going to be talking about the freight and landed costs feature within AdvancePro and how it can affect vendor orders, vendor bills, and customer shipping. So let's jump right in. We're going to head over to AdvancePro today. And the first area that you're going to want to go to just to make sure that these features will be fully enabled is Admin, Utilities, and Freight. So if you don't see this key enabled, you're going to want to reach out to your AdvancePro advisor. You may need to get a key, and then you can go ahead and use these features. Let me show you all about them. So we're going to start on the vendor side. We're going to start with a vendor order, and we're going to get an item on that order. So I'm just creating a vendor order here, and we'll get an item on our order. There we are, and we're going to save that order. Now the first area that has to do anything with freight is the vendor freight button. So this is an area where you can create a record, a bill of lading record, that's going to essentially keep track of your quoted costs over on the right and any customs information you might need on the left. So things like the commodity, the country of origin, the freight company or the freight broker, things like this. This is just a tracking field, and you can have as many bills of lading records applied to a single order as you need. So if you have an order going with an intermediary stop, say it's stopping in one country before it moves on to you, and there's two separate bills of lading to get it to you, you could set that up. Or if the order is being split up into two containers and you need two bills of lading for those containers. Those are both viable ways. This is sort of the equivalent of stapling a bill of lading to your paper copy of the purchase order itself and putting them in a filing cabinet together. So a week down the road, a month down the road, you're going to be able to look at this and find out what's going on with your order, find out who you need to call to know what's going on with your order and where it is on the ocean. So this is particularly useful if you are working in container loads and having long-term shipping. Okay. Now another thing to address with shipping is if you're just paying your vendor for shipping, you can go ahead and enter your vendor shipping amount here, and that's sort of the end of the story as far as straightforward vendor shipping. So I'm going to skip the receiving process. I'm going to choose this direct bill option, and we're going to place that. So that takes us right to a bill as if I had received it. So if you're used to receiving orders, this just skips that whole process and it takes us to a bill. So here's our bill, and what you're going to see is this freight button, and normally it would be located down here if you've got the full screen view of a bill. What we're able to do at this point is apply freight cost to get a landed cost to this bill. So here we can go ahead and open up our freight module, and we can put in all kinds of costs. Say we paid $150 inland freight for this to come in, and we can see if we want this to associate to the product cost or just a landed cost report. And we can choose our vendor, our freight provider, and this does require for a freight provider that you have at least one service item, and I'll show you how to set this up, associated with that freight provider. So this is a vendor that has a special relationship to a service type product. In this case, we happen to have called it freight. And I can go ahead and give it an order number. So in one swoop, this is actually going to associate our costs to the bill, so we know what our total cost to bring in this product was, but it's also going to create a payable that goes out to QuickBooks as a bill for our freight provider. So we're able to cut a check out to our freight provider. Now down at the bottom, we have some options about how we want to divide the cost up. If we select quantity, then each and every unit of each and every product on this order is going to get the same amount of cost. If we select cost, then the more expensive items are going to get the lion's share of that cost. If we select weight, then if you've configured weight for your products, the heavier items are going to be getting the lion's share of that cost. If you select volume, it's going to look at the dimensions. So this way, if you're paying by the container, you can divide up the cost that it took to fill the container. If you're paying by weight, you're going to be able to look at what was heavier and apply an amount of cost there. So this way your landing cost can be just that much more exact. So I'm going to go ahead and save this at this point. We'll back out. And now we have this display freight checkbox. So here we can see the original unit cost to the vendor. We can see the unit freight cost, and we can see the combined cost. So here's our original unit cost. Here's the freight. There's the combined cost. Now I'm going to create the bill. And now it gives me a little warning because it's going to actually create two bills, one for the vendor who provided the goods and one for the vendor who provided the freight. So we'll go ahead and click on that. I'm going to navigate over to our View All Bills and Credit memo. So if you're used to using AdvancePro, this will be a little bit more familiar to you. We'll go to our Finished Bills. So now we'll see this freight icon, which means that this item has a freight bill. And if we click on that, it's going to show us the freight information. So here it's actually generating a report for us to see that freight information. Okay, and here's a quick summary of our freight information. So again, this gives you just a little bit of information about the freight details for a particular item, and you'll always see that these are right next to each other. So you're going to be able to see the freight bill as well as the original bill. Now, what if we have a couple of pending bills and we want to apply freight to them together? They got sent to us in a single shipment. Well, we can check those items off and we can click this freight button and we can actually do one freight entry that covers both of those bills. So that's another way that we can do this. Now let's talk about how to set up a vendor for that freight bill. So I'm going to head over to View Vendors. It's a very general way to set up a vendor, the actual initial setup. There's nothing really special here about getting into the vendor and about how this is set up. We just happen to have named them a freight company. We can open this up. There's no real requirements here within the setup. The only requirement is they have to provide a service item. So we've set up freight. Let's talk about that service item and how it gets set up. So I'm going to go to my products. It's not an inventory product, it's a service. And I'm going to look up that item. There we are. Now you'll see this little hammer and wrench icon that denotes a service item, and all you do is when you're setting that up, you choose this drop down and you'll have inventory, non-inventory, and service item. Go ahead and choose service item instead of an inventory item, and then you'll be able to use that. You will have to associate it with that vendor. It's not just automatic. So you can go ahead and associate it with that freight vendor, and then you'll be able to do that. And by the way, in this freight window that you're able to access from your View All Bills and Credit memos, if we go ahead and open that up, each line here could actually be a different vendor and a different service item. And just depending on what you enter as the PO number, they'll either create the same bill or a separate bill. So you could have Joe's Fast Freight order 101 and order 102 could actually be a whole separate order. So you've got a lot of flexibility here to enter quite a few payables all at once. Okay, so that talks a little bit about that freight module and how that gets set up. Let's talk a little bit about freight on the customer side. So as we head over to the customers, we're going to go into an open order at this point that we've already got set up, and I'm going to go ahead and place this order. Now again, if you're just charging your customer shipping straight across the board, whatever you're going to be collecting from your customer, you can put that in the shipping line, or you could actually make a shipping service item and have it as a line item here on the order. We're going to go ahead and place that order. We're going to process that order out of our warehouse, and I'm going to go ahead and open up the pick ticket. So we're in the warehouse, we're getting ready to ship, and if you don't have the shipping module or the freight module enabled, you might not be used to seeing this area right here. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about shipping. We are able to sync with UPS and FedEx. I'm just going to go ahead and fully pick my items. There we are. Now, something I want you to be aware of is if we send this off to UPS or FedEx, the tracking information as well as the negotiated prices, the actual cost that you're getting quoted, come into this area. This is your customer freight costs tracking. So you are able to keep track of what this transaction cost you to get out to the customer. So you can go ahead and fill this out or have it populated by UPS or FedEx, and then you're going to be able to know for this transaction what the charges were. Now, if you fill out anything on the additional shipping line right here, that's going to add to the cost that you're already charging the customer. So if you're charging 0 and you add 10, the cost that appears on the invoice will be 10. If you're already charging 20 and you add 10, the cost that appears on the final invoice will be 30. So that just gives you an idea of the freight capabilities with respect to the customer. And that does does kind of wrap up our tour of the freight module today and all of its capabilities, both on the customer and the vendor side, and all of the landed costing. One last area I do just want to visit before we wrap up is the individual product. So I'm going to go to a product, and I just want to mention where you're going to be able to view that landed cost by default is if we go into our product and we go to the vendor and pricing info, you'll now see the average landed cost displayed here. And again, we can click here for a little bit more details. We can see the landed cost across our transaction history. So that just gives us an idea about the landed cost overall. If you'd like to see that on a report, there are reports available either within the software or customizable that can provide those figures in a report for any kind of tracking you might need. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Have a great day.